now. So you should have gotten a consent box. All right, well, welcome to Unit 3, focusing on the assessment system. This particular session is geared towards grade 5 new teachers, meaning this is your first year teaching Amplify. So this is an introductory session. However, it does assume that you've taught Amplify or at least have attended an orientation session. Welcome. For those of you I have not met, my name is Reshma. You should be able to see me on the webcam and also on my slide. I've been a learning specialist here for the past couple of years. I've had the pleasure of supporting educators like yourself in implementing this program, and I'm excited to do the same for you here today. Just some norms so we have a productive session. If you haven't used Zoom that much or at all, just please make sure you orient yourself to the platform. Go ahead and please find the chat box. Thank you for muting your microphones, but please do unmute. I do love to hear voices other than my own, but if we keep our microphones muted, it just reduces background noise. If you'd like to have a note catcher present, feel free to do that. Set up a Google Doc, a piece of paper, and most importantly, please do engage at your comfort level. Of course, I'm here to support you, answer any questions you have, but by no means am I the only expert in the room. The expertise is in here, so it's important that we hear from everybody, especially in terms of what's been working in terms of strategies, tools, best practices you've been utilizing during this unique instructional time. You might want to set up 2 windows for today's webinar. If you've been in my past sessions, you know I usually demonstrate something and then give you a chance to practice and or reflect. So there's really no need to go in between windows. But if you're somebody who likes to work concurrently on 2 tasks, I'll give you a moment to go ahead and set that up now.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much for joining. We're putting the attendance sheet in the chat, so you take a chance. You get a chance, please fill out the attendance sheet. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you.
Okay, so hopefully you got to set up your windows, completed any pending housekeeping tasks. And the objectives of this workshop, this is what we hope to accomplish in this 1-hour workshop. Please do know again that this session is geared towards new teachers, so there might be some material that you're already familiar with, or you might be introduced to materials that you've seen before, and hopefully you get a deeper understanding. If you do need more targeted support, please do know that we have open office hours during the same Zoom link. You can just stay on here from 4 to 4:30. If you need any more targeted support, we are available then to support you. But during this 1-hour session, we hope to accomplish these 3 objectives. We want to be able to utilize the unit resources to really deconstruct the learning goals of this unit. We want to be able to apply the formative assessment resources that Amplify has to help you analyze your students' responses and gauge their progress towards these learning goals. And we want to begin to really implement the embedded differentiation strategies and supports we have in the Amplify Science curriculum, particularly for Unit 3 of 5th grade. We hope to accomplish these objectives through the following agenda. We began with some welcome and introductions, and we're going to go ahead and jump into a short anticipatory activity. So for this, folks, if you don't mind just joining me on this Jamboard, which I'm about to drop into the chat, and welcome, Rachel. Nice to virtually see you again.
Thank you, Singh. Glad to have you again as an instructor.
Oh, thank you. And I see Bunny too. Welcome back. It's always nice to see familiar names at least. So I dropped the Jamboard into the chat. I'll go ahead and meet you there too. And if you don't mind on this Jamboard, and for folks who've attended the other grade level sessions for this particular session, you're going to notice that some of the activities are similar. But however, as we get to the unit, some of the formative assessment resource analysis will be specific to the Unit 5. So You may have already done this Jamboard if I saw you during the grade 4, 3, or 2, which I all facilitated. So I'll give folks about 3 to 4 minutes. There are 2 prompts, folks. Please note that there's 2 whiteboards. Jamboards, you can put in your definition of formative assessment and strategies you've implemented to formatively assess remotely. I do see at least one person who attended the last grade level session of this. You might have come upon another strategy between now and then, several days that have passed. So go ahead and add that. I'll give folks 3 to 4 minutes to post their responses. Give folks another minute just to finish gathering their thoughts and posting. Thank you for your active engagement from the onset. Okay, I do see our board for definition of formative assessment has in fact filled up, and I see folks are saying that it's a method of tracking student progress to determine their glows and grows to help guide instruction. I love the glows and grows and tracking student progress. In fact, a key element of formative assessment. I see a way of monitoring student learning to provide ongoing feedback. Again, monitoring and ongoing, other key words. It seems like folks have a pretty strong hold of what formative assessment is. Perhaps we can revisit some strategies you've used to formatively assess remotely later on, as I see this board is blank for now, which is okay because I'm about to show you some tools that I've heard other educators use. But first, as you've all said, a more formal definition of formative assessment, really echoing what folks on this PL have been saying on the whiteboard, Jamboard rather, is that it's in fact a cycle of eliciting, interpreting, and then taking action on information about student learning. So 3 steps: eliciting or gathering, interpreting the data, and taking action. We're really going to take a look at each of these 3 steps, best practices related to them in Amplify Science during this session. Some tools that some folks who joined previous sessions, you've shared this with me before, that you've been using to formatively assess during remote learning. I've heard Pear Deck is pretty popular. Here are some elements of Pear Deck. I particularly like, I added here G Suite. I like the Google Forms personally because it sends me that spreadsheet with all the data in one place that I don't have to make myself. I've heard of Flipgrid, excuse me, for the younger ones to provide those audio responses. Microsoft Teams, if you're using that, and Nearpod, I've heard is pretty popular. So those are some third-party tools you may be using or you might consider using to help you formatively assess. And if anybody else has others that they'd like to share out loud or put on the Jamboard, feel free so we can all benefit from learning from each other. I'm going to pause there. Folks have been pretty quiet so far to see if there's any questions. Folks, feel free to come off of mute at any point. I try my best to check the chat while I'm facilitating, but I know I will miss a question or two or a comment. So please don't hesitate to come off mute and let me know if you have any thoughts or questions that need immediate attention. And thank you, Brittany. Kahoot. Yes, that's another popular one I've heard. Thank you for reminding us of that one. And folks on Zoom, you can also privately message each other. So if you're wondering about a certain strategy tool that somebody else has shared, want to learn more, feel free to privately message and learn more from that person. We're, again, here to all learn from each other. And I know that I certainly leave these sessions always learning something from you. So as I said, this particular session is focused on Unit 3 of Grade 5 through the lens of the assessment system, focusing on formative assessments. In order for us to gain a deeper understanding on how to elicit, interpret, and gather the data about student learning, we need to know, what are we having kids figure out? And in Amplify Science, we do that through the progress build. But before we try to understand what we want to have the kids figure out, we need to know, what's the problem of this unit? So again, this particular session was designed for new teachers. So I know there are some teachers who have joined that have taught this curriculum before. So maybe you taught this last year, but if you're completely new, this is a unit rather that hopefully you'll get to teach this year. So what is the problem, phenomenon, and student role for this unit? Let's take a look. So the student role is that the kiddos are water resource engineers. And they are helping the city of East Ferris. The cities of East Ferris and West Ferris are located on different sides of a mountain on this fictional island called Ferris Island. And East Ferris is having a water shortage while West Ferris is not. So the water resource engineers need to figure out what exactly is causing this water shortage on one side of the island and not the other. And in the process of figuring out this problem, they learn about the Earth system. And they also, towards the end of the unit, they design ways to alleviate the effects of water shortage, including designing fresh water collection systems and proposing using chemical reactions to treat wastewater. So that, folks, is your problem, phenomena, and student role. So keep that in mind. So how are kids going to figure that out through these 22 lessons? And what are they going to figure out? So this learning progression that we call the progress build not only anchors our assessment system, it also informs the coherent sequencing of all of our lessons. So in terms of the assessment system, you can see that all the assessments are anchored on the progress build. Today, we're going to be focusing on these orange hummingbirds, particularly these small orange ones. And you see that they're sprinkled all throughout the lessons. These are our formative assessments. They're opportunities for teachers to continually gather data about student learning and to take action on that data. So in order for you to really understand and deepen your understanding of the purpose of the formative assessments, you need to know what you're assessing. And in order to do that, we need to really deconstruct the progress build. But before we do that, a few notes about formative assessment and Amplify Science. It involves a range of modalities, so students aren't only writing, they aren't only talking, they aren't only reading. We make sure that they're engaging in these mini performance tasks through all of these modalities: doing, talking, reading, writing, visualizing. And in doing so, it really helps us make student thinking visible. Another key point is that we're assessing the 3 dimensions. So we're not only assessing what do the students know, but we're also assessing how well are they engaging in science and engineering practices. Another key point is that the formative assessments in Amplify Science are weaved into instruction. So you no longer need to start or stop instruction like an exit ticket. You have to wait until the end of class to administer those. These assessments are happening while you're teaching. And we're going to get a feel of how this can be done remotely shortly. But as I've mentioned, the assessments are 3-dimensional. And if you go to the assessment system document on the unit landing page, it will tell you how the assessments align to the 3 dimensions. So we're actually going to be shortly looking at the very first on-the-fly assessment for this unit. And you can see the 3-dimensional alignment. That this particular assessment is going to focus on asking questions and defining problems, obtaining, evaluating, and communicating information, while at the same time assessing students figuring out of these big disciplinary core ideas through the lens of the cross-cutting concepts. So without further ado, let's go ahead and step 1. And this is one of the preliminary steps we always recommend you engage in while learning a new unit is after figuring out what's the problem and phenomena and student role, what do kids need to figure out? What science concepts? So in order to do that, I'm going to ask you to go ahead, navigate to the 5th grade 3rd unit. Go to your unit landing page and open up Progress Build. I usually like to open it up as a printable PDF. It allows me to view it easier. And you'll find your progress build here. You'll see that the bold are summary statements, and on the bottom in plain text, you'll find elaborations. So I'm going to provide you with a collaborative working doc to go ahead. Right here, this is a collab where we're all going to join there and work collaboratively to unpack the progress build. So folks can just kindly join me there. Just wait as folks join before we go on any further. Going to get you started. We're going to go ahead and put in the name of the unit, the Earth system. And as you can see here, there are fillable boxes. So what we can all do collaboratively on this page, if we can all work together, go ahead and choose. We're not going to, this is a short session, so the intention with any of these activities is just to get you started. And the hope is that you'll revisit these on your own time to complete it. So go ahead and choose a progress build level, summarize it in your own words, and go ahead, since it is a small group, tackle one of these as well. What's important about the progress build to note is that it's cumulative. that ideas in previous levels are refined and revisited in subsequent levels. So really understanding what new ideas added and how those new ideas connect to the previous level is also an important understanding to obtain. So I'm going to go ahead and give folks some quiet work time collaboratively to get started on unpacking your progress build. But I am still here if you have any questions. Of course, come off of mute or chat me. I'm going to put 5 minutes on the timer just to get us started on unpacking the progress build. Of course, let me know if you have any clarifying questions. Give folks another minute to wrap up whatever level or connection we're working on. All right, I know that was a short amount of time, but again, the intention today during this 1 hour session is just to get you started. I see folks have started really summarizing the progress build levels. Perhaps on your self-study or your collaborative learning time, feel free to go ahead and dive into what are the connections between the levels. That's always a good exercise to engage in. I'm going to pause there to see if there are any questions that I've missed or if anybody wants to come off with mute with any thoughts or questions. Okay, it seems like we're good for now. So we're going to dive right into an exemplar assessment experience in which we're really, I hope to give you a feel of what a formative assessment can look like and feel like in a remote environment. And for this one, I'm just going to model the first activity where there is a formative assessment for this particular unit. And for the next just few minutes, I'm going to ask you to put on the hat of your students. I'll put on the hat of a 5th grade teacher. And please put yourself into the mindset of a 5th grade student. As I go through this activity, know that it says 15 minutes. It's not going to take 15 minutes because I'm just modeling it for you, and we're adult learners here, so I'm going to click. I'm just going to say fast forward. When I do say that, you know that this is individual work time or discussion time that kiddos participate in. The purpose is here again is for you to get a sense of what a formative assessment can look like and feel like remotely. And please do know, you'll know that the formative assessment is on the slide where there is a picture of a gray hummingbird on the lower right-hand corner. So let's go ahead and begin. Welcome back, 5th graders. We're going to start activity 4 from our second lesson. And I want you to think back to what you read in the book, Water Shortages, Water Solutions. And go ahead and come off of mute and let me know what big ideas did you discuss and record? Fast forward, fast forward. Thank you for sharing. And yes, like you all said, when people use fresh water, there is less clean fresh water available. So that's really the big idea that we got from our reading that you all just mentioned. So based on what you learned from the 2 books that we've read, remember one was Water Encyclopedia, the other one was Water Shortages, Water Solutions. Think of a new understanding you have to answer our question, which is on this sheet that you all have on hand that I uploaded on Google Classroom. How can people affect how much fresh water is available? I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, into groups of 3 or 4, and I'm going to be visiting each of those rooms to listen in on your conversations. So go ahead into your breakout rooms and I'll see you there. Fast forward, fast forward. So I listened in on your conversations, and all of you are doing a really good job of creating new understandings. I want to give everybody a moment to go ahead and record this understanding into the sheet that I had uploaded into Google Classroom or your science notebook, whichever one you're using now. Fast forward, fast forward. How about we have some folks, some students come off of mute and let us know what new understanding did you record? Fast forward, fast forward. So yes, we know that in the previous lesson, there's very little fresh water on Earth, but today and yesterday we learned that people use water, so then there's even less clean fresh water. So my new understanding, similar to what I heard going in some of the breakout rooms, is that people can overuse or even pollute whatever little amount of fresh water we have. So there's even less clean fresh water available. So 5th graders, what we've been doing is synthesizing. Synthesizing means taking multiple pieces of information, in your case from those 2 different books, to understand something, to create a new understanding. And so far we've just been talking about water, and water is an important resource that people use every day, and it's really the focus of our unit. But we also want to keep in mind that there's other important natural resources that people rely on, like air, trees, and soil. Why do you think these resources are important? Fast forward, fast forward. Thank you for sharing. And just like people can affect the amount of water, human activities can also affect these other resources. How do you think this might be the case? Thank you all for sharing. Fast forward. So it's really important to think about these connections between people, natural resources, but just know in this particular unit, we're going to focus on water. And in the next lesson, we're going to continue to synthesize ideas to really think about why is East Ferris having a water shortage problem? And folks, that's the end of the model activity. So let's just keep that model activity in mind as we think about how to best formatively assess our students remotely. So to begin doing that, we're going to deconstruct this on-the-fly assessment. And to do that, remember when you go to the actual lesson and click the hummingbird, you see this text box appear. And this text box in every on-the-fly assessment tells you exactly what to look for or listen for. So I'm going to give you a chance to read this and meet me at this other doc, which I'm about to drop into the chat. This is an individual work doc, folks. So unlike the other one, I am going to ask you to please just make a copy. And it does say copy me in the title in caps, just to remind you, because unlike the previous doc, we're going to work on this individually. So go ahead and I'll meet you there. I'll give folks a minute to make a copy, and then we'll move on. Right, I do see folks are joining. Go ahead and go to File. If you can just make an individual copy for yourself, that would be great. And then when you do, if you can meet me here on the second one slide, that you'll see is a look for tool, a formative assessment analysis tool, organization tool that we call. And also, if you look at your slide presenter notes, I included a PDF copy here. So if you were to download this onto your computer, it's fillable and you can use this for lessons if you wanted to. So while this is on a slide, I also included an open PDF copy here if you find this tool useful and wanted to use it. So the first part of this tool is, of course, fill out the basic information, unit name, chapter, and then this part is really asks you to hone in on what you're looking for. So I'm going to give folks a moment to read this look for tool and type in to your look for tool, what exactly would you look for? So I'm going to give folks a minute to do that. And then if you can share your look for in the chat once you're done, that would be great. So if you can take 2 minutes, and we'll come back together. Thanks for beginning to put in your look fors in the chat, or you can come off of mute. I'll give other folks another minute. And if you cannot chat, feel free to come off of mute if you'd like. So I do see we'd be looking for how, Brittany says, how well the students are accessing the information and determine if they're understanding at different checkpoints. Yeah, for sure. That is definitely a general look for that we're always looking for when we're engaging in formative assessments. I'll share my idea. If I was looking for this, I would say, based on what I read here, I would say, I would just keep it simple. How well are students synthesizing new ideas? Something like that, but what you look for can sound a little bit different. And Rachel says if they're gathering information and if they're understanding information is being given, for sure. So we all have different ways of kind of saying essentially the same thing, but just do know that in this particular formative assessment, we're trying to see how well are the kiddos synthesizing, connecting information they learned from different sources. So that would be a step one in entering using the data collection tool if you wanted to. And step two is, okay, we elicited information about student learning, and now we're going to interpret it. So let's say we're here and I have some student names and I see some groups of students. And by the way, just to backtrack, if you did get a chance to read these directions, you just write the student name here. And then in your columns, you can use whatever system you want. If it's just plus minus delta, plus minus, just to indicate if a student shows strong understanding, some understanding, or no understanding. If you notice there's a couple of kids who are really struggling with synthesizing, how are you going to take action on that data? And again, folks, please do know that this particular resource I offered as a PDF format, just to show you if you were to download it onto your computer. I'm just going to go ahead and do that just to quickly show you what I mean. That this PDF is available for your use here. So what would you do? In the on-the-fly assessment box, we also give you some suggestions. So if you can take 2 to 3 minutes to read these suggestions and let us know which suggestions will you use or adapt. Okay. So what would you do? You have a few kids who are struggling with synthesizing. What would you do next? So go ahead and read what Amplify offers as a suggestion and let us know what would you use, if any, or what would you adapt, or what new ideas do you have? I'll give folks 2 to 3 minutes to gather their thoughts. And again, drop your ideas into chat or just simply come off of mute, whatever you prefer. So would folks use the idea in the now what section, which is basically telling you refer to another part of that text and use it as an example, or would folks, does anybody have their own ideas or would adapt those ideas? Okay, Rachel, thank you for letting us know what you would do. You would start with offering a whole class model because sometimes the ones that get it still like to get the extra. Then I would break into a small group to give further instruction and monitor more closely. For sure, just targeted small group instruction in fact does work. I've heard from other educators just using an everyday example since during this time kids are more home more often or not in school as much as they were in the past. So using those everyday examples of synthesizing, using something in their everyday life can also be powerful. Thanks all for sharing. I wanted to also point you to another tool that I've included in your individual work docs. It's the very next page. It's an opportunity for you to really break down the formative assessment even further. I'm going to go ahead and show you an example of how it could be used for this particular formative assessment that I modeled. So the first step is really figuring out where does this formative assessment fall on the progress build level? What level of the progress build are the kids working on? So for this one, the very first formative assessment of grade 5, unit 3, they're working on level 1. In level 1, remember, when you deconstructed the progress build or began to, is rain can happen when water vapor gets cold and condenses into liquid water. Then you want to analyze student data further and really figure out which dimension is this formative assessment aligned to. So the key concept that kids are starting to figure out has to do with cycles of matter. They are obtaining, evaluating, and communicating information, and they're really using the lens of system and system models. The modality, remember, is talking. If you remember the way that I delivered it, I said, okay, we're all going to go into breakout rooms and I'll visit you there to kind of hear in on your conversations. So students were talking during this formative assessment. And what was I listening for? How well are kids synthesizing ideas around human needs for fresh water and the limited amount of fresh water that's on Earth? The next section, folks, is really taking action on student data. Like, what can you do to adjust? So the first section asks you, when are you going to adjust instruction? So in this particular formative assessment, I might just do it in the moment during the breakout rooms. How? I might also keep an eye on certain students throughout and keep them in mind for future lessons because synthesizing is going to be a strategy that they're going to use all throughout. So this is another tool that we have for you that you can use to further unpack your formative assessment. So I'm just going to give you a few minutes to go ahead and check out the next on-the-fly assessment in this unit and begin to fill this out on your individual work doc. Again, the intention here is not to complete this, but just to get started. Again, you can complete this during your self-study or collaborative planning time, or you can feel free to stay during office hours, and I'm glad to work through these with folks. So we'll get back together in about 3 minutes. So go ahead and navigate to the next formative assessment and see and unpack it using this tool. Okay, coming back together, I hope you found this tool helpful and will find some sort of use case for it. So before we close out, I just want to see if there's any questions that I've missed. I have been monitoring the chat, but of course, feel free to come off of mute if you need to. Okay, seems like we're good. I just want to close out by pointing you to and reminding you in some cases of the differentiation supports, but just a general framework to think about differentiation, ways we differentiate. Could be what you teach, how you teach, or how you have your kids demonstrate what they know. These are ways that you already Sorry about that. So these are ways that you probably already use to differentiate, and the Amplify Science differentiation brief provides ways to do that. So if you go to the differentiation brief and click it, you will find these various strategies. Remember, these are the different categories. Right here, we have potential challenges and the differentiation strategies for your different learners. So those are differentiation strategies you have at the lesson and activity level. But so far we've been talking about lesson-specific and activity-specific differentiation. The entire curriculum is also designed to support diverse learner needs. If you go to the program guide in your global navigation menu and then click Access and Equity, you're going to see different ways that the curriculum serves diverse learner needs. So access, go down, you click Program Guide, Access and Equity, and you will see the various ways that the program caters to diverse learning needs. And on your collaborative work dot, I included a space where you can also include your own strategies for support after reading this particular section for these various learners. I'll check to see if there's any questions. And I do want to remind you, the at-home resources that we have, remember this is how you get to it. You go to the global navigation menu, click Program Hub, Remote and Hybrid Learning Resources, choose your grade, and then choose your unit. And in the at-home units, in the teacher overview, you're going to find a section called Assessment Considerations. So I do encourage you to refer to that to get ideas on when and how to assess students. So just closing out, I'm just going to ask folks if they can just drop me a number on how ready you feel to, in terms of these objectives. If you can throw me a number from 1 through 5 using the scale. Again, this is a no judgment zone. You can message me privately so I get a sense of how well this session went for you all. Okay, I see the numbers coming in. Okay, and I see numbers with decimals. I love that. Okay, seems like folks are feeling overall confident in the room, which is always nice to hear. I want to remind you, don't forget about the NYC resources site. Resources from today's PD session will be posted there, as well as other important resources for you all. The Program Hub not only contains your remote learning resources continually updated with tons of videos. You have colleagues who weren't able to attend today. You'll see videos on almost every single topic with Amplify Science. And don't forget about our program guide and the Amplify Science Help Bear, as well as our support hotline number, chat, and email. They're available to answer both pedagogical and non-pedagogical questions. So I'm happy to take any final questions, but this does officially end the content for today's session. I do thank you all for joining us and hope to see you again.